before we get started, as you can see, I've got a lot of stuff up here to go over. There's a lot of detail in it. A lot of things up here are pretty small and kind of hard to see, especially if you're not, right about where I am. So at the end of the program, we're going to make sure that we've got time for questions and for an up-close look, photos, all of that good stuff. We'll go over the rules for that when we get there, because some of it's kind of sharp. Now, what all of this is, what the program's about, what I do, I'm dressed kind of funny here, is what we call experiential archaeology. Especially the younger folks in the audience. Anybody know what archaeology is? A few of you? All right, well, for those of you who are unsure, archaeology is the study of people from the past. Now, it can be the recent past, say like the fur trade era in Wisconsin, 17 and 1800s. It can be knights in shining armor, or ancient Greece and Rome. In my case, it's a bit further back. I start out around 10,000 years ago in what we call the Upper Paleolithic. It's the Stone Age, the Ice Age. Now, experiential, another part of that, this big word means through experience. I dress like this pretty much all the time. Everything up here that's not a fossil replica or something like that, I have made with stone and bone and amber tools the way that it would have been made thousands of years ago. And I make it to use it. I actually take this stuff out into the real world and try to use it, try to figure out how it works, how long it lasts. What do I have to do to fix it or keep it working, right? By doing that, we can learn quite a lot about why ancient people did things the way they did, how their technology worked. Now, how many of you have seen cavemen in movies? A few of you are cartoons, right? Our ancestors in Hollywood, they get kind of a bad rap. A lot of times you'll see in the movies the standard caveman kit of the club and the spear, right? Have bad posture, not real smart, have to think really hard before they do something. Right? It really does a disservice to some fascinating and incredible ancient people. Stone Age hunter-gatherers were just like us. In fact, they really were us. We're all here in this room because we had ancestors that were alive and survived in the Stone Age and the Ice Age. They were very intelligent. They just did a few things a little differently than we do. Now, one of the problems with studying prehistoric peoples and what they did is that the archaeological record is full of holes. If I take my spear here and I go off over here by the pond and I throw this on the shore and then I hop in a time machine and go forward in time 10,000 years, hop out and go looking for my spear, there's not going to be much left of this. Bone, antler, wood, pine sap, glue, all this stuff that's organic, it breaks down and lasts. I'll end up finding something like this. But, it's not much of a mammoth hunting spear, right? To figure out how the rest of this goes together, we have to fill in a lot of holes. The way I really like to explain it is, does anyone like jigsaw puzzles? A couple folks, yeah? Good. Now, Cave Wife likes the really big ones. If you take one of those big 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzles, pour it out on the kitchen table, and divide those pieces all up into piles of 10. Now you've got 100 piles of puzzle pieces. From each pile, pick out one piece and set it aside. Now all those piles of 9 that you've got left, toss them into the fire pit out back, light them on fire, and roast your marshmallows over. Gone forever. You can't look at them first, you can't reference them now, they're just gone. You have no idea what they were. Now go back into the kitchen table and put together those remaining 10% of the puzzle and tell me every detail about the picture on that puzzle. You can't, right? It's full of holes. Now you can fill in those holes by looking at things that are universals, things that people did the same way everywhere. The spear is a good example. Think on that puzzle. If you got a big hole in the sky, but the sky is blue, figure this guy's probably blue with the puzzle too. The spear is like that. Most people make their spear pretty similar size and proportion. They're typically making them out of the same kind of materials in very similar ways. So they can fill in those blanks and rebuild a spear like this with reasonable confidence. And every once in a while we get very lucky and find it intact, something or other like a spear, and we can then go back and improve these replicas and learn even more. Now, that is what I do. I go by the Mammoth Hunters, so we should probably go find a woolly mammoth, right? Now, before we get into a mammoth hunt, I want to really drive this point home. A woolly mammoth is a big animal. A mammoth hunt is a big deal. How many of you have lost a tooth? Most of you? Now, you know when your tooth falls out, you get a look at one of your teeth not inside your smile. It's not very big, right? Not the size of a pea. This is a single molar, a chewing tooth from a woolly mammoth. It's kind of an average sized one. They get bigger. Now, woolly mammoth only has 4 of these. What? And they lose them and get a new one kind of like we do, twice in a lifetime. They're sort of weird looking on the top. Looks like the bottom of a tennis shoe. Woolly mammoths eat almost nothing but grass and prairie plants. They're kind of like living lawnmowers. If that mammoth came up and decided it wanted to lick your hair for some reason, maybe likes your shampoo, you'd only actually see about the top half or 3/4 inch of that tooth. Most of this is down in the jawbone. And this is the chewing surface. But your tooth, mammoth tooth. Now, for those of you who are completely sure, I know most folks know, this is a miniature version. Full-size one just doesn't fit your heart. Woolly mammoth pretty much looks like an elephant. They've got a big hump of muscle on the back. Their shoulders are really powerfully built for moving the head back and forth. And their tusks curve around like a corkscrew. They use those as a sort of a snow plow. Put them down in the snow, shake their head back and forth, and clear off the snow from the grass as we get toward winter. Now, can I get a helper from each side here? And you go ahead and come out here. I want you to take that knot, and go that way. And tangled up in that. You come this way. Keep going, keep going. Take that knot on the end. There you go. Go that way. Keep going. Keep going. All right. Stop. Now, there he is here. That's tail to the base of the trunk on a woolly mammoth. 17 feet long. From here to there is the tusks, about a further 11 feet. A little closer because they curl around, but still massive, massive animals. Now, in particular, the one that we're going to be hunting today is found in Kenosha, Wisconsin, over by Milwaukee, the largest found in North America. Stood 13 feet high, which would be my spear, the full length of my arm. Higher than the ceiling, actually about to the peak of the ceiling in the middle of the room here. He weighed around 10 tons and was capable of chasing after you at about 25 miles per hour, around the speed your parents would drive their cars through the neighborhood. And what's more, elephants today show us that elephants are smart. That mammoth is smart enough to see that if I'm the mammoth hunter and I'm coming after it with a pointed stick, I'm dangerous. It's going to figure out that if he kind of does a little, before I stagger it, that he wins. So mammoth hunt is really dangerous. All right, you can set those down. Thank you. A little round of applause for our woolly mammoth boys. Now, that spear that I've got there is not the mammoth hunting spear. And when I kind of drive that from home, no pun intended. Woolly mammoth bison. But it's a pretty similar texture to what we found in mammoth mummies, actual frozen woolly mammoth. Find a few of them in Siberia. So imagine this, but like 4 or 5 times thicker, really dense, tough, shaggy fur. Just to get through that fur and touch the skin with the spear point, you gotta go about the depth of the spearhead. Under that, you've got skin that's around 4 to 6 inches thick, depending on where you get them. For reasons we'll talk about in a few minutes, we're going to hunt that woolly mammoth in the fall. So we've got a layer of fat that he's been building up all summer long, more than a foot thick. Under that, muscle, again, about another foot thick. Then rib bones, bigger around than my arms. So now I am close enough to touch that mammoth. I have my hands on his fur. I've stuck it with that spear, and it hasn't killed him. That hasn't hit an internal organ. I've given him a really big splinter, and I'm close enough to touch him. That hunter was not any of our ancestors. If he's really lucky, that mammoth is going to turn around and use those big tusks to smack him and send him 30 feet up into the tree over there where he hangs out looking like he got hit by a truck. It's not a good day. If you're really, really unlucky, he'll use his truck to pull pieces off of you and throw them at the other hunters. Really unlucky. You don't want to be that guy. Now, somebody in this audience, I have no doubt, is thinking, well, it's a spear. Why don't you throw it? And it's the thing, right? Throwing spears exist all over. Now, this particular spear is not a throwing spear. This is what we call a lance. It's for stabbing, but not for throwing. It weighs about 4 pounds. If you think about going to the grocery store and you get the big gallon of milk, next to it there's the skinny jugs. Those skinny jugs of milk, the half gallons, weigh about the same as this spear, around 4 pounds. Now, please don't go to the grocery store and grab a half gallon of milk and throw it and see how far it'll go. I don't want that phone call again. It's really awkward. But it gives you an idea of how heavy this is. If I throw this as hard as I can get it about to the edge of the patio over there from here. That gives me about 3 seconds until the mammoth gets here. It's not really good odds. For a thrown spear, call it javelin, it's going to be something more like this. A lot lighter weight, a little bit longer for the balance. Keep the pointy end pointed towards something. Rule is, if you poke it, you got to eat it. Now this, it weighs about the same as like 2 cartons of milk for the lunch. A little bit more than a pound. If I take this and I throw it as hard as I can get a good 30 yards or so out toward the edge of the parking lot from here. At that distance, if I turn and run after I throw the spear, I might get 10 or even 12 seconds before the mammoth gets me. Still not great odds. So somewhere way, way back, somebody got real smart and made a spear like this. Now, what's this look like? Oh, I heard it. It looks like a giant arrow, right? Yeah, and it works just like an arrow. Pointy end goes into supper. The feathers here are called fletching. They keep the pointy end pointing towards supper. The back end of it, it's got a little notch, just like an arrow. But it doesn't work with a bow. Right? Could you imagine trying to shoot that from a bow? You know, it'd be hard to aim it, right? It goes with one of these. Now you come up here a little bit, you'll see I've got bunches of different shapes and styles from different times and different places, different cultures. They go by all kinds of different names, things like Mupsu or Gilpil, Mumara. If you've heard of this before, you've probably heard it called an atlatl. Atlatl is a really rough mispronunciation of South American, Central American name for it. All those different names just mean spear thrower. The way it works, take the spur, a little hook on the end, that goes into the notch on the back of our dart. Take my thumb and index finger and grab the dart. Use the rest of my hand to grab the thrower. And when I get halfway through my spear throw, to right about here, my wrist won't bend back anymore. I'll let go of that dart, not the thrower. It's really embarrassing when your spear thrower goes farther than your spear. You have a flick of the wrist, like you're casting a fishing pole. With that, I can throw one of these darts more than 100 yards. And if I'm a little bit closer than that, I can put enough force behind it to go through a foam archery target and into the garage door behind it. Okay, go ahead, what's up with all that? With a tool set like that, we can hunt a woolly mammoth in relative safety. And we don't think that they were actually running up to the mammoth like you see in movies and throwing that spear from 20 feet away. We've actually found mammoth skeletons in a couple of places where they have spear points still embedded in the rib bones and the vertebra, coming in from a downward or from an upward angle. There's only a couple ways that happens. You can climb a tree, you have to wait for the mammoth to come close enough, and it can knock the tree over. You can climb a cliff, which isn't bad, the mammoth can't knock that over, but he still has to come close enough. Or, most likely, our hunters are throwing their spears in what we call a volley. Think like archers in medieval movies. They launch their arrows up, the arrows fall down on the other army. If your hunters line up, they take your spear throwers and they chuck those spears up into the air. They fly along and come down and hit that mammoth from above. That's how you get your spear points lodged in the back of a 13-foot high piece of something. Now, with all of that in mind, going on a mammoth hunt is a big event. It's a big deal. It's not something that we would do regularly. In fact, it was kind of a special occasion. Now, as I mentioned before, we're going to hunt the mammoth in the fall. A couple of reasons for that. We don't want to hunt them in the winter because it's the ice age. The snow's too deep, right? It's hard to get out and move around. It's cold. The environment's pretty harsh. And we want food stored away before we get to winter. We don't want to go out and look for food in the middle of winter. If you're familiar with the Ice Age Trail, that more or less follows the edge of where the glaciers were in Wisconsin around 15,000 years ago. And some of that ice north of the Ice Age Trail line could be more than 1.5 miles thick. Now, south of that, you get winter like now, a little harsher, a little colder, but it's much more habitable than barren fields of ice. Now, the Heber mammoth we mentioned before, he was found in Kenosha, Wisconsin, right over by Milwaukee. The skeleton actually currently resides in the Milwaukee Public Museum. I think our hunters were probably over by the Mississippi River initially, over by the frost. They're over there because all summer long, they're going after fish and berries, roots, tubers, wild edibles, easy food like that. And of course, mammoth is 10 tons. If you have 10 tons of steak sitting out in the summer sun, it's not going to be edible for very long. Springtime, well, the mammoth has been living off of its fat stores all winter. It's kind of tough and chewy, and there's other stuff growing up fresh and coming into season, so it's not mammoth hunting season. In the fall, mammoth has been eating all summer long, fattening up on that grass. He's juicy and tender. He's as big as he's going to be. And of course, it started to cool down outside, so the whole world kind of becomes our giant walk-in freezer. It gives us enough time to take a 10-ton mammoth and make it into about 6 tons of food. Now, our village, 15,000 years ago, isn't very big. During the Paleolithic, nobody's farming. We have to go out and find food every day. We find extra food, we do our best to preserve it so we get extra food for winter. But the village is going to be about the size of the group in this room right now. Much bigger than that, it's hard to find enough food for everybody. People are kind of spread out. Now in this room, we've got some big, tough-looking young fellas and young ladies who'd probably be ready for a mammoth hunt, but we need a few more hunters. We want 12, maybe 15 or 16 experienced hunters for this. Like I said, mammoth hunting is a dangerous venture. So one of you over here is going to go across the river and talk to Across the River tribe. One of you over here is going to go to Cave Wife's mom's village and let them know it's time for the mammoth hunt. They're going to be real excited because they want to eat all winter too. We're all going to meet up, get the villages together, and we're going to get the hunters together, and we're going to grab all of our stuff, all the stuff I've got out on the table here. fire kits, spear throwers, backpacks, sleeping bags, the whole deal. And we're going to strike out to the north. Now we're going north because that's where the mammoths are. Up along the edge of that glacier, there's a big stretch of open grassland we refer to as Mammoth Steppe. And that's where the mammoths are hanging out eating grass. Now to get there, we're going out into a Wisconsin that doesn't look all that different from Wisconsin today. Most of the forests are similar to northern Wisconsin, right? A lot of cold weather trees and that sort of thing. Once we get out onto the grassland, it's open prairie. It's like prairie in Wisconsin today. But it's populated by animals that we don't have here anymore. Of course, we've still got things like turkey, white-tailed deer, woodchucks, and rabbits. All that sort of stuff is around. But there's also things like elk and moose. There's two kinds of elephants, mastodons and woolly mammoth. There's musk ox, bison that are about twice the size of modern bison, huge 6-foot-long horns. Even things like caribou, like think of it as reindeer. Horses, camels, and if we're unlucky and we cross paths with one, there's giant ground sloths. Kind of imagine your little 3-toed guys that hang upside down in the trees and sleep a lot. Flip them right side up, make them as big as a truck, and give them a bad attitude and 8-inch long claws. We don't want to run into one of those guys. They're awfully grumpy. When we get out of the woods, out of the forest, and up onto that Mammoth Steppe, onto that prairie, and we're going to see herds of buffalo, horses, camels, things like that. But we're not after those right now. We can hunt those in the summer. They're small enough to move around and we get one invited to supper. We're looking for mammoth. Fortunately, mammoth are easy to track, not just because they're massive and they leave footprints that I gave you around, but they're kind of a living snowplow lawnmower combo. They're going to take those tusks, put them down in the snow, and use them to clear the snow out of the way, and then eat the grass as they're walking. That means when we find a mammoth trail, it's like a plowed sidewalk or a mowed lawn. You just kind of walk along. Oh, there's one, right? They're easy to follow. And when we find that mammoth, we don't want to get too close to it. Instead of about a football field away, we throw our volley. Those darts come down and hit it. And once we've got a spear in that mammoth, we follow it. It may take a couple of days to bring it down, depending on how lucky we are with the spears, how accurate our hunters are. When that mammoth does finally fall, we've got a few problems. First and foremost, who in here is really strong? All right, we've got some hands. Good. Now, woolly mammoth, that 10 tons, it's about the size of the garbage truck that comes by your house once a week. You think you can pick up an entire garbage truck and carry it 200 miles?
No.
No? That's a good answer. Where that mammoth falls is where that mammoth stays.
What?
We can't move 10 tons of food. So that means our hunters have to do a couple of things. First off, we're going to have a runner. Our runner's going to be real fast. They're going to go all the way back to La Crosse from Milwaukee to tell the village, hey, we've got food. We've got meat for the whole winter. Supper's on. You're going to do it in 4 days.
What?
We figure they're running about 50 miles per day. That's like 2 marathons in a day. There's actually contemporary accounts of Native Americans, as an example, running from southern Michigan to New York State during the French and Indian War in less than a week. And when they got there, they had enough energy left to join in a battle. These people are in way better shape than I am. So we're going to take our fastest runner, probably one. And you're going to run from Milwaukee to La Crosse. You're going to do it in 4, maybe 5 days if you decide to slow down a little bit. When you get back to the village, you're going to take a drink, you catch your breath, and go, we got food. And everybody's going to be really excited. They're going to pack up that entire village. They're going to take their tents, tools, toys, even their toddlers, well, most of them. And they're going to start walking back all the way to Milwaukee, where you just came from. We You figure they're probably going to make 10 or maybe 15 miles in a day because they're carrying a lot. You know, kids get tired halfway through the day and want to be carried, that sort of thing. So it's going to take them a couple of weeks. During that couple of weeks, our hunters that stay back with the mammoth are hard at work. They're taking that mammoth and they're making it into all of the meat that we like today. We hear like steaks, cheeseburgers, bacon, hot dogs, brats, chicken nuggets, barbecue ribs. Anybody like liver and onions? Yeah. Liver's great. That's a treat for our Ice Age hunters. They'll actually, the hunters that stay back with the mammoth, they'll take that liver out. That liver, it's about the size of this young right here. Big liver. They'll throw that right on the fire and cook it up and eat it fresh. That's the reward for the hunt. Now the rest of that meat, they're going to be using their super high-tech, fancy cutting knives, and they're going to be taking that woolly mammoth meat and cutting it into long, thin strips and hanging it up to dry. They'll be putting it over fires to smoke, and they're basically making a lot of it into mammoth beef jerky. That's going to last them through the winter. Of course, it's cold enough, they're going to be taking bigger chunks of meat, ribs, and steaks, and hanging those out to freeze to keep that food preserved for when the village shows up. The problem with this, we're not the only hunters out on the Mammoth Steppe that like meat. In Wisconsin today, we've still got some big carnivores. You can see a few of them in the zoo here. We've got timber wolves, we've got cougars, and we've got black bears. You know, there's things like bobcats and lynx, wolverine, kind of smaller things, but we just hunted a mammoth the size of a dump truck. We're not worried about those guys. We are worried about, on the small end of things, some of these guys. This is a dire wolf, not just a character in Game of Thrones. Real animal. Would have been up to about 150 pounds and stood around waist high. Very closely related to modern African jackals. So rather than a timber wolf, they would have looked almost like a giant dingo. And they had a massive bone-crushing bite. This crest of bone on the top of the skull, what we call a sagittal crest, it's muscle attachment for the jaw muscles. These guys were typically buffalo specialists. They would crack bones like this with their teeth. I can't crack a bone like this with my teeth. And just like wolves, we think they travel in packs. So we don't have to deal with just one of these. We have to deal with 10 or 12 of them. They all want our mammoth. Fortunately, I don't think they're quite as smart as modern wolves. Their brains are a little smaller because their jaw muscles take up so much space. Alongside the dire wolves, of course, we've got the American hyena, which looks like their modern African version, but about twice as big, almost as big as some of our black bears. And American lions, which, again, a lot like the African lion, but the size of grizzly bears. Biggest bite yet. We have Smilodon fatalis, saber-toothed cat. Its name literally means deadly teeth, right? These fangs are serrated on front and back, just like shark's teeth. And they're huge. They're rooted deeply in the skull. They're really strong. You can actually use these as steak knives if you felt so inclined. If you were a brave enough dentist to get one for the cat. What's really neat about these, the fangs are just part of the story. I don't have an entire skeleton with me, unfortunately. I'm still working on that. Their front legs were longer than their back legs, were very, very powerfully muscled. We actually think one of these cats at around 400 pounds, shoulder-ish high on me, could wrestle down a bison over half a ton. Single-handed, just pounce on it, grab it, force it down to the ground, and then they used the widest bite of any mammal in the fossil record, and those big fangs to go full-on vampire cat, bite at the neck. And that's how they catch their prey. Now they're kind of big game specialists. We actually think part of the reason they're not still around is because they have a hard time with small prey. They're not super fast, they're super strong. You can imagine one of these eating something small being like, if you ate a chicken nugget like it was corn on the cob and had to just kind of nibble back and forth across it, their teeth here stick out in front of the fangs on the front to help them tug at meat when they eat. That said, our mammoth is plenty big enough that they're interested. And worst of the worst, biggest and baddest of them all, this big fella. This is the giant short-faced bear, the largest carnivore to walk North America since the T-Rex. On all fours, he would have stood around 6 foot high. His chin could rest comfortably on the top of my head. You go out to the zoo and with the photo of Muncie, the Kodiak bears, they're about 4 feet shorter than when he stands on his hind legs, 12 to 13 feet high. That's the height of the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. It's weighed over 2,000 pounds. And if I could get a really brave volunteer. Nobody's really brave? Ah, go ahead, come on up here. So I'll have you face everybody. We really don't want to deal with these bears because the human head is basically a jelly bean for these bears. You can look up. I'm not brave enough to do that myself. Thank you. Can we get a round of applause for our bear fighters? Now, those predators actually bring us back to this first spear here. You see, this is not the spear we get the mammoth with, right? This is the spear we keep our mammoth with. We'll actually have most of the hunters working and taking and making that mammoth into meat, turning the rib bones and the leg bones and the tusks into tent poles, stretching the hide over and making it into a big shaggy igloo of a hut. We're going to have a couple of guys on guard, watching out over the mammoth steppe, and when we start to see something like one of those bears galloping across, we say, hey guys, grab the spears, and we all line up, hold the spears out front like this, and say, go away, bear, please don't eat me. And we really hope they listen. Now, fortunately, bears and most predators call them lazy so much as they like to be energy efficient. If there's 12 or 15 of us all waving our sharp spears at him, he's not going to want to fight all of us to take that mammoth the way he can be pretty confident with 1 or 2 of us. Then he'll probably wander off. We hope. Now, I did mention drying that meat, smoking that meat. Does anybody here like their steak raw? Just like fresh off the butcher shelf, pick it up, no cooking at all, and just put it around. No? There's usually 1 or 2 little ones that are like, yeah, I like my steak raw. The thing is, we cook our food because it not only helps make it easier to eat, easier to digest, it makes it safe to eat. Or today, like if you went to the grocery store and ate a steak like that, you'd probably be all right. For the most part, we've got sanitation down well enough that it's not too dangerous, at least not as dangerous as it would be. Wild game, say like one of those raccoons over there, you don't want to eat that raw. They can carry all kinds of germs, viruses, bacteria, parasites. Believe me, you don't want a tapeworm 15,000 years ago. It's just going to be a bad way to go. So we're cooking our food. We're cooking that meat to make it safe to eat. Trouble is, unlike today, fire is a little difficult, right? Like, here today, behold, I have made fire. Is everyone impressed? It's super easy, right? But a lighter like this, it's a modern invention. In some parts of the world, if you're lucky, you live in an area where you've got some rocks like this. It's what we call iron sulfide. If you strike these rocks together, they'll spark. Now the sparks are very, very light, very dim. It's really hard to see in a lit room like this, but you can use it to light your fire if you've got the right kind of materials. If you're in the front row, you might kind of smell it. The sulfur in it, it's somewhere between firecrackers and farts. So we're not going to demo that too much. Wisconsin here, our hunters, because they don't have rocks like that, they're really reduced to the original way of starting fire. We're going to rub 2 sticks together. Now, To demo this, I actually have to do it down on the floor. I'm like 5 or 6 arms short of being able to do it at eye level. So if you're in the back rows, you might have to stand up to see this. But we'll show you how it works here. I did promise already for this morning's program, no unplanned fire drills. Not going to bother the fire department. So I'm not actually going to light a full fire, but you will be able to see how this works. Now, for this to work, I have to have the right kind of materials, the right types of wood. They have to be kind of soft and they've got to hold the heat. Something like an oak or a hickory won't work. Also, I have to heat that point of contact, that friction point, up over 800 degrees to get enough heat to actually start an ember. That means I have to warm it up like this a little bit. If I just start at it really hard, I'll end up with noodle arms before I end up with the fire. Now, once we get this going a little bit here, we'll be able to see. Everybody see the smoke?
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, to be honest here, a handheld like this is really more of a desert method. It shows up all around the world, but in northern Wisconsin here, in central Wisconsin, we can get pretty humid during the summer. That can make this very hard to do. If this gets rained on, or you fall down a hill in wet snow, land in a puddle, you may not get a fire going at all. So, I think our Ice Age hunters have upgraded their kit a little bit, in different pieces, like this. Now with this one, it's a lot easier. We call this a bow drill. It gives me a little bit of a mechanical advantage. My record for getting that same amount of smoke that I just got from all that effort from the hand drill is 3 seconds. Now, I just barely made my record this morning. First part of the summer season here, I've been making a lot of fires. Got a new cave baby in the house, and she's been taking up a lot of time. So I'm a little out of practice, but we're going to try for my record. I'm going to have all of you help me with it. Get ready, get set, go. When you say go, I'll start going, and we'll see if I can get that smoke in 3 seconds. All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
All right, get ready. Get set. Go.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, I think that was more like 4. Looks like I gotta lift some more tusks. Now, you saw how much easier that was with the bow than just doing it by hand, right? This is still pretty sensitive to moisture, but even in humid weather, damp weather, you can usually get this going if you have a little bit of practice. Now, I can't just rub 2 sticks together and, like you see in the movies sometimes, just poof, there's a campfire. There's a few other steps. That'll build up a pile of dust, kind of like burnt sawdust. And in that, if I get it hot enough and it gets enough air, it'll start a little tiny coal, an ember, about the size of a split pea, really, really small, really fragile. We take that and put it in stuff like this. I promise this is not air from the drain. This is shredded up plant fiber. We usually make it in the shape of like a bird nest, or what we call a tinder bubble. We give that air, and that coal will grow and get hotter until this bursts into flame. And from that point, we can add our firewood, which we've hopefully taken a few minutes and pre-chopped, because it's really embarrassing when your tinder is burning and you don't have firewood yet. And then you can get your fire going. In wet weather, or when we're traveling long distances, we might actually use something like this. This is a type of mushroom that grows around here called chaga. It grows on birch tree bark. We put an ember on this, it'll smolder like a coal and stay hot for hours. You can put it into a container and keep it burning and carry it, so you don't actually have to light your fire like that every day. It saves on your fire kit and gives you better odds of staying warm and having cooked supper. Keeping that fire going is actually such an important job. We think that we'd have a couple of our hunters on shifts. We'd have a day shift and a night shift, just tending to that fire, just to keep it going and make sure that we have warmth and light and cooked food. Now, we're going to go on the assumption that our hunters have had great luck. They fought off their giant bears. They've been making meat for a couple of weeks. Now our village is going to be showing up. And we're going to be real excited about that. We have food for an entire winter. We haven't seen friends and family for weeks. And they're getting hungry. They're going to take and set up their tents around that mammoth hut, light some fires in between those huts to help keep those big giant bears at bay. And then we're going to have a party. Right? We've got 6 tons of meat. We've got food for an entire winter on top of whatever we gathered and saved for the whole summer season. Now, of course, that gives us a little bit of another problem we have to deal with. Everybody's happy to see each other. Everybody's fat and happy and warm and well taken care of for the winter. Well, now we're bored. Right? What's a party without some stuff to do, right? Now, when you have a party today, you celebrate something, say a birthday party, you probably have TV, video games, computer games, music, stuff like that, right? No?
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Okay. I was going to say, you guys have some pretty boring birthday parties.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Well, 15,000 years ago, we don't have electricity.
What?
There's no light bulbs, right? Lightning is a magical thing that the gods do in the sky to show off to each other. It's not a tool that we can use. There's no TV, no video games, there's no radios, no iPods, no phones. You have to make all of it from scratch. Now, everybody recognize this?
Yeah. It's a point.
A few of you have probably seen this before, kind of like the Lord of the Rings or like the Viking war horn type of thing, right? Now this is halfway to a musical instrument. We kind of like to think of this as the Stone Age cell phone. Now this one doesn't work so well. Cave Wife calls it the fart horn. Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Somebody in that side row. Now, this is actually something that was supposed to work. I always like to show this because if any of you feel inspired to go try and make some of this stuff for yourself, if it doesn't work the first time, don't be discouraged. I've been at this for a long time, and I still have things that don't turn out right. In this case, I cut it too short. The bigger one here works pretty well. If you're in the front row, where you can be a little loud, but you go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not too bad, huh? Now, like I mentioned, we kind of like to think of this as the Stone Age cell phone. It doesn't have the little holes in it to play different notes. As the village is coming up looking for the mammoth site, the runners trying to show them where they came from, the hunters are waiting for them. They can start blowing on that horn at over a distance. They can hear each other before they can see each other over the hill, for example. And it gives them an idea of, oh, hey, the horns, they're over there. I've actually taken this out, used it with some help from friends. You can hear it up to about 1.25 miles. It travels quite a ways. If I actually had the chance to go out over like open water or open prairie instead of woodland, it'd probably go a bit farther than that. Now, of course, one note's not much of a song for a party, so we need a little something else. This is a chicken leg. It was barbecued, it was delicious. Yes, I did make a musical instrument out of my leftovers. This little guy is a whistle. Was inspired by some flutes that go back a long ways. It works pretty well. You good to go?
Yeah.
That's the leftovers. Now,
That was a little funny.
the chicken leg is a little bit short.
What?
The original inspired that. It's actually made out of woolly mammoth tusk. Now this one is bamboo. I just don't have a big enough piece of woolly mammoth tusk that I would be at all brave enough to carve up. We figure the original took somebody around 300 hours with stone tools to carve. That's probably a little bit more time than you'll spend doing homework for an entire school year. That tells us that this was something that was very important, right? Music, particularly this instrument, meant a lot to somebody. That's a huge amount of time. Now this one, even though it's bamboo, I made it as close to the size and proportions and dimensions of the original as I could get. It's a little off, but it's close enough to count. And what's neat about it is when I play this, it plays the same musical notes that you would learn in music class today. It's a diatonic scale. The original was more than 40,000 years old. That is very, very old. You ready? Not too bad. We can't have a party without the band. Can't have the band without the percussion section.
What?
Brings us to drums. Drums, of course, they're pretty universal. Most groups around the world have some version of a drum. They work pretty well. The trouble is that drum is kind of fragile. Like our Ice Age hunters are nomads. They're moving every few months seasonally, chasing after food. What if I put my drum in my backpack, I venture out into Ice Age Wisconsin, get chased by a giant bear, slip on some Ice Age ice, fall down a hill, and land on my drum? It's going to break, right? I know that's a lot of what ifs, but still. So what we're going to do is replace our drum with one of these for our Stone Age bass section. All right. Go. Now, everybody ready? All right, now if you're up front, it can be a little bit loud.
We can't hear it.
You can't hear it?
No.
It's really loud up here, are you sure?
Yeah.
I'm just teasing, making sure you're all paying attention. Now, this, especially the full-size one here, is an outside musical instrument. It's a little bit close quarters to play it in here. So we're going to do we call the Angry Bumblebee.
Angry.
Smaller version. This is called a bull roar. And just a paddle shaped like an airplane wing on a piece of string. What we do with this is give the paddle a twirl and then spin it around. Didn't give it enough of a twirl. I swear it works. You can hear why I call it the Angry Bumblebee, right? Now, these are very easy to make. If you do want to go home and make one, parents, teachers, guardians, what's really the most important thing with this is the type of string that you use. When I first tried making one of these, I did not use this leather cord. I used some twine. Now, as this is spinning around, that paddle twirls. And you hear how the sound pauses every once in a while? What happens is it's twirled as far as it can one direction, it's twisted that string really tight, and then it starts twirling the other direction. Vibrating the string is what makes the sound. The trouble is, if you use twine, one direction, it tightens that twist up really, really well, makes a great sound. The other direction, it unravels your string, and the paddle flies across the living room and breaks a lamp. Cave wife tells me to play outside. So, really good leather cord, boot lace, like paracord, stuff like that works pretty well. Just want to make sure it's braided. It's something you can't untwist. Now, for you youngsters, if you're making one of these and you're playing outside with it, watch out for brothers, sisters, cats, dogs, neighbor down the street, cars on the road, that sort of thing. We don't want that phone call like the jug of milk. Now, with that, I know I've been talking for quite a long time up here. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to get a good look at everything. Before you come running up, I just want to go over the ground rules real quick. When you get up here, in the center section here, you will see a sign next to the stone tools that says sharp. Please do not touch. Believe it or not, that is because they are sharp. Please don't touch them. I don't have enough band-aids for everybody. Several of them are made out of different types of obsidian, which is actually the sharpest cutting edge that humans have ever produced. I could very easily shave with it if I felt so inclined. For much of the rest of what's up here, especially all you young folks, can you all show me that you have one finger? No, just to make sure that's not the nose-picking finger, right? Just making sure. What I ask is that for anything that's up here, we do a one-finger touch. Of course, if you want to hold something, pick it up, look at it, just ask. And if it can be helped and checked out safely, then absolutely. And of course, any questions or photos or anything like that you like, I'm more than happy to accommodate. Move the rope out of the way and you can come on up. So thank you very much, everybody. You've been great.